Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Constitution Call. Today is October the 25th, 2024, and we've got a special speaker tonight. It'll be, I'll go ahead and say it. Michael Mason is going to be joining us, and we're thrilled to have him here. So I'm going to turn the call over to Silver, and he is here with Low Tide and Arjack and Missy Oki. So it's all up to you now, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you turning out tonight. So Mason and I just had a nice 20-minute conversation, and he and I are going to have all kinds of fun with you folks. So Mason and I are pretty much in the same vein, and there's a lot of mutually agreed upon confusion in the landscape. People just don't know what they don't know. And this time frame was intentionally set up because the powers that be never expected us to get a clue, to be able to stand back up on our own 2 feet and say, hey, we're onto you, and no, hell no, and oh, bloody hell no. So at the bottom of the dog pile are some British institutions. They have been the hidden hand behind about 95% of the world's problems. And the powers that be, that are the front men, have been systematically exposed. Well, when you get back to the head of the snake and you actually deal with the issues, and those who have brought forth the program, the agenda, and call them on the carpet, it's unto you, the one who's looking in the mirror, to recognize you've been lied to, swindled, hornswoggled, flim-flammed, and ripped off. And then lied to your face and lied to behind your back. Well, our public employees, and I'm going to say little p, public, and little o, offices, holders, in large part don't recognize they are working for a foreign entity, and they think that they are the actual American government. Well, at this point in time, there's a grand correction going. American land law has been called. Effective October 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the conclusion and settlement of the little t, little h, little e, United States Incorporated settled its voluntary Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That thing in D.C. and all of its subsidiaries are kaput. So in the coming days, you're going to be seeing a grand shuffling. Certain key figures have said that when 90% of all of government is consolidated and liquidated, there'll be a much smaller, more congenial service of government to the people. This ties into a 160-plus-year-old fraud being discovered, being perpetrated against every last one of you here. This fraud was perpetrated by semantic deceit, and the character behind the counter at our county buildings don't know about it because they were not taught. They have the same public education as the rest of us. So until someone gets curious enough to go down the rabbit hole and take the snorkel with them, because it's a deep dive, most people, as they're learning this stuff, are going, what in the world is going on? Well, Mason and I, having concluded a conversation, are going to basically help you speed read through the landscape. So this corporate entity that concluded its bankruptcy, there was a certain president and CEO of this entity, and he's a very well-known character. Well, he also wears another hat, and in the coming days, you're going to find very self-evident proof that he is still wearing that hat. So has Mason come on board yet? Mason, are you here? No.
I don't see him yet.
Okay. So there is a landscape restructuring going on. Every state of the union is going through this exercise to cause the sheriff to forcefully step into a certain role where they have absolutely no choice but to uphold their capital P public, capital O office. And should they choose not to, they can step down and resign and be subject to deportation. Deportation to England. Because for the last 160 years, they've all functioned in a corporate capacity and actually have never had any authority beyond that of a Pinkerton. Yes, an armed doorknob rattling Pinkerton agent. So with the land law being proclamated and the notice going out on the 8th to step into the public offices, there is a court case called Mack and Prinz versus United States. And in that court case, the Supreme Court told the sheriffs, yeah, you can uphold the Constitution if you want to. Well, that if is a discretionary act. Maybe today, maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow if I feel like it. Unless you are in an area where the sheriff is appointed by your county corporate structure, all 3,100 plus sheriffs scattered across America are being required to step up. Now, in an area where the county appoints the sheriff, that particular sheriff will never have supreme authority in the county. They will always be a Pinkerton agent. So look in the landscape and see how your respective county functions. If your county sheriff is actually appointed by the county council or some other body, you have grounds to be concerned. Because once the sheriff actually steps into this public office, he assumes absolute hierarchy control over any federal agent. And they actually have to ask for permission to step into the county. So the recognized limitations of the true constitutional operations are now being kicked into high gear. Anybody got a question about that?
Person that you're talking about, I would assume we would all know the name. Is that correct? When it comes up, we will all know who you're talking about and how it affects us?
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Mm-hmm. So this entity that is at the bottom of the heap, so to speak, is a British operation. So let me see here. It is, come on. It's an Institute of England. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. What is this thing? Conversation I had with Mason's very intriguing to me. When I get back to what that entity is, I'll post it. Anyway, everybody in between, every agent at the state, every agent at the county, are going to become bug-eyed when they find out that they're acting in a capacity as a foreign employed hired help capacity, and that the Declaration of Independence does not apply to them. At the current time, over 22 million people living on American soil fall in this category. Over 22 million are eligible for deportation because over a century-long rampant mischief. Any questions? Hello, Mason.
Hi.
Glad you snuck in the back door.
Thing.
I'm glad you snuck in the back door.
That's okay. I had to cut everything off and go back to square one, so here I am.
Ta-da! Well, I was telling people about our little 20-minute conversation or so, and how our respective futures look rather bright together.
Oh boy. Absolutely. Yeah, it's only uphill. Uphill? No, we're on the top of the hill. We're getting ready to go down the other side.
Well, as long as everyone picks up a little clump of snow and makes that snowball and walks up to the edge of the cliff and have no fear of dropping it over the edge.
Oh, now you're talking about something that everybody should know about.
Uh-huh. Look out below!
That little thing in the middle of your solar plexus, you know, right where your heart center's at?
Yeah.
Every time you get that little twist in there about something that you're doing or something you're being told or something you might think you don't want to do, you get in the indicator, that's exactly where you need to be focused.
So
that's the thing that grows that little heart center.
Yes, and that is the front. That is the front door to our BS filter.
Yes.
When we get that instinctive gut reaction, that doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah, of course not. That's too scary. Yeah, but that's okay because once you take that first step, you know, it's game over. And it's that first step that's the most important one. And it's usually the one that's probably the scariest because you're going to be looking right straight into the mirror at yourself in a previous time at something you were doing or did that's really not good, whether you be a part of the system, the government, or who knows what. But that's the key. That's the indicator right there.
Yep. And I come from a perspective where I look at the mirror and going, is that character that I am seeing in the mirror better today than they performed the day before or yesterday? And every last one of us
Absolutely.
needs to do this. Is the soul searching we all need to do.
Exactly.
Well, I didn't
Absolutely.
elaborate
That's the step.
about some. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's the first step for the rest of your life. This isn't something that comes and goes and, you can ignore it or not. Because everything you do from today forward, you're going to have to deal with in some future point. And the more you face the things that you don't like and don't want, those things you're going to have to deal with. In fact, you may even find you get to a point where you're enjoying what you're doing because you're going to be an example for those people that don't know who you are, what you're about, and all of a sudden they're being faced with their own little fears. Like, oh, Mr. Sheriff, yeah, you've been doing some bad things your whole life. You just don't know it. And then once they start to see what those things might be, which it's going to be up to each of us to take part in whatever we're dealing with. I don't care if it's for the local police or the voter registration office. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to be specifically addressing, dealing with every aspect of our system from a sovereign viewpoint. That's a big piece of all of this. Because you're going to be not only doing things that most people think you're nuts, but you're going to be doing it in a way that they have no argument against it. And they're just going to be wishing they could do the same, or they're wishing they could have the same situation, or be living in the same environment that we're in. And we are, by the way, in this country, this is unique on the planet. And this particular time we're all in right now, it's amazing for all of us who are coming to the plate to be able to take that step as the example for everybody else on the planet. You got all this money stuff going on all over, but guess what? It's all futile if you can't learn and understand why it's happening and where you came from and what your job is in it now. So this is a big piece of the puzzle.
Well, there's this old book, and it says, do not hide your light in a bushel or under a bushel. And all of you that have come forward to this are going to step up and be that light to the neighborhood, your community, your county, and even maybe your state. Think about that. As your knowledge
That
base,
turns into the nation.
and as your knowledge base grows, so will your confidence, and you will be that shining light to everybody.
That's a fact. So don't be afraid. That's the biggest thing, that little fear point. You'll always get the indicator. Once you're starting to do something, you're looking at an assignment, something somebody might have fed to you, or you're looking at a license or a rule or regulation or some commercial stuff that you're just, something inside you just says, why do I have to do this? Why do they make me do this stuff? Well, you're being given the opportunity at that moment to stick a little head deeper into that rabbit hole. Because that's where you need to go to find out why you're having to do it. And everybody will get their own assignments somewhere along the line.
And once you find out that you've lived all of your existence deemed to be a foreigner living on American soil, providing goods and services to the American people if you can find one. So once you figure out that that applies to you, which you, little y-o-u, capital Y, little o-u, or all caps y-o-u, which version of you does it apply to?
You've covered them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's time to wake up to that, know who and what you are, and then start taking the responsibility for educating. See, we're the instructors of our system. That's the people's duty. And until you can understand that for us specific, I believe for somebody else, they don't know that, and they have yet, at least at this point, they're starting to come to the reality. Some of them are that they've been gone down the wrong rabbit hole, and there's consequences for that, and they're going to find out before it's too long. The military is the only way. How many times have you heard that one? And that's where this is headed. You know, I can hardly wait to get a JAG guy standing next to me in one of those U.S. District Courts or even the Supreme Court and giving the instructions to the justices there how to handle a particular element dealing with my rights. Because that's where this is headed. I've already done it in many different ways in many different places without any response from the other side except, goodbye, case dismissed, go away, don't bother me. You know, I'm like, oh, that's neat. Well, guess what? The time has come. And for those of you who think that this is just some half-hearted exercise for tomorrow, today is the most important day of the rest of your life. And as these doors begin to open, you will be given opportunities, either in your liberty or your land titles or your citizenship, your status, your taxing situation. All these things you're going to be given opportunities to address and to do the right thing because you're going to know what the right thing is. And these things are starting to appear all around you. You just haven't got your head wrapped around it yet. And so people like Jim and myself, we've been down the rabbit hole more than once. And we can give you examples of things that you might want to look at. And most importantly, sometimes you're going to be given assignments that you may not like because it's going to address something inside you that you don't like or don't want to do. And there's your key again.
And some of these assignments are going to be so counterintuitive to everything you have ever thought was right and correct, and you're going to have this internal struggle because every last one of us has been Perry Mason to death. Judge Janine, divorce court, everything on TV has been programmed for a reason. It has left an indelible mental subconscious program mark on your being. And that one little item needs to be ripped out like a bad tooth.
The key in all of this is once you understand that every person that has a position in government in this country, he has an allegiance to you, to the Constitution, whether he knows what part that might be. But the biggest part is when you know what your right is and what you're telling him to do, you're going to be the one standing there that this person is going to wonder, oh boy, and you're going to be released from all of those apprehensions of whether or not you're going to have the right to do what you should have been allowed to do your entire life and just didn't stand up and demand it. But of course, you and I, most of you know that, you know, it's been futile for most people to do the stuff we're talking about because you were always being faced with adversity or you know, a policeman on the side of the road that may put his light on you or some tax collector who's trying to steal your bank account and take property, your house, all that. I've done the whole thing. But the point is very simple. We are now in a position where, because of what we've learned with respect to who we are and what they are, they're subject to us. And every one of those people that we're talking about right now in government, every one of them can be identified as a non-resident alien of a foreign corporation. Every single one of them. They're not one of us because they just don't know who they are. And once you figure out who you are in the system, and you can see that they are all opposite, they've got no allegiance anywhere with respect to your duties, what you have a right to, but you have all the power. And that's where you're headed right now. You're headed to, you have the power. Why? Because you know the truth. You know how to enforce it. You know the simple little words to ask someone when they confronting you with something. You know, like, well, who do you work for? Where do you get your money from? Who pays you? What kind of money do you get? What's your allegiance? What's your status? All these little pieces are things that they can't give you the answer that they need to be able to be immune from what it is that's coming. That's where their opportunities are going to come in. You know, you guys want to fix this? Because I can help any one of them, depending upon how bad or how horrible their event may be that they've been involved with. I can show them the remedy. I can help them to get themselves straight as long as they're ready, willing, and able to accept the responsibility of their ignorance and all the things they may have done up to this point. So this is going to be more than just a little haphazard experience for most of us. This is going to be a grand experience for all of us.
And for all of those who have refused to listen and think that we're nut jobs, they're about to get the biggest, rudest wake up call imaginable in their existence. When their most cherished everything gets turned upside down.
Yeah, amazing. See, Jim and I both, you know, we've been down this scenario for so long. It's like the questions kept coming. When are we going to get some remedy here? You know, and let's get the answer. It always comes. So just be patient. It's coming. A little voice comes on. If you're in tune with your other self and the avenue of information that we all have access to, you're going to be able to ask the little questions and get the right answer. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you're looking for someone else to step up and take your responsibility away, it's not going to happen. And you're going to be dealing with yourself every step of the way. And every step of the way, you're going to grow a little bit stronger. You're going to be a little less fearful. And you're going to be more pointed than you've ever been. When you get to a place where you're secure inside yourself because you're connected with the universe that's got your back because of what you're doing, you're going to be unbelievably powerful in your own personal life because you're going to find out that you are the creator of your universe, you personally. And nobody can take that away from you. You're the only one that can waive it. So you be careful what you say, be careful what you ask for. Just stay on point. Be quiet in your quiet time. Listen to the frequency. Look at the light if you've got it. And ask a question that's important for you and the universe. Make sure the universe is always included in what you're doing because you're part of it. And you created your own. And that's the only way you're going to fix your own is if you ask the universe to tell you what you need to do to fix my universe. I don't like this tax collector. I don't like this. I don't like that. All this stuff in my life I don't like. Well, the answer's available now, and it's not an issue that you're going to be in trouble for accomplishing. The system is caving in. And all those people that have been doing what they've been doing to everybody for all this time, they're going to be running hither and yon, trying to figure out what happened. But they'll want to know at some point, individually or by the groups. I don't know. Don't have pictures on all that, but I just know it's coming. The
So,
last thing you
in a
want to be concerned
nutshell,
about is where your money's coming from.
yep. In a nutshell, unto thyself be true, and you're going to learn the keys of self-governance. You are in control of you. And paradoxically, you are responsible for you. I have to step back for a minute. I'll be right back.
100%. Quietest audience I ever saw.
They can get out of line and get kind of rowdy sometimes. So be careful. Don't catch them on a rough Friday night.
I'll tell you what, there isn't any question that cannot be asked if there isn't already an answer for it. And the ones that ask the hardest questions are the ones that get the worst assignments. So it's a growing thing, and everybody will learn how to deal with it sooner or later.
Well, eventually, I'm sure Silver has probably he hasn't really covered it directly before, but if you guys can get around to it tonight, since it's election season, would you please help us consider what we should do as to elections? Because it's not only a federal election, but it is a regional and state and county and local election. And it's sensitive to my heart because I was asked to go in and uh, counsel my mother-in-law, who is 94, and about her election ballot. She's very sensitive to this, and so I got a look at a ballot, and I'm in a central in the center of the count the I'm in the center of the country, and our state ballot has several local issues that we wanted to cast our ballot on. Not only just the national election, but if you can counsel us about those things, because I think most of the people here have have feelings about that stuff, and we've been counseled about taking back our name and standing up for our sensitive issues. But casting our ballot is important to most of us, especially about issues of statehood and things that are on the ballot on the excuse me, on the local issues. So if you would, if you can take a minute or so about speaking to those things, that I think that would speak a lot to some of these people that are on the call tonight.
I'll give you the first indicator you might want to look at is have you ever looked at a voter registration form and literally identified every word on it and how it's defined and what part of that form is pointing its finger at you in your new status?
Well, I haven't.
I have, and more than that. But here's what I'm going to give you. There isn't a single person running for office, with just maybe the exception of Trump, which doesn't matter because he's still president, that is qualified in their affidavits that they've signed over the course of their life, just like you, just like me, to be something that is a fictitious entity and the non-existent element that was created by a foreign cartel. And it's called a citizen of the United States. That's the first question on the ballot. Now, if you're one of those, well, you may find out at some future point that that thing doesn't exist. And there's not just opinions on this subject, but there's case law to support exactly what I'm telling you. And the funniest part is that if you have been doing any research in your Constitution, I don't care if it's state or federal, uh, the original 13 states had some very specific definitions and words that were used to identify who the qualified electors were. And I know there's a lot of people that are going to get all upset and they're going to say, oh, you're a bunch of racists and you this and you that. And I asked them simple questions. I said, look, how many of the unalienable rights that the founders died to secure do you exercise every day in your life without having to pay for it? And I usually get the same answer. None. You pay for your travel. You, you pay for your life. You pay for your work, your labor. You pay your property taxes. You pay tax on everything you do. And you're regulated in everything you do. So if you don't even know what your rights are, how are you going to know what the qualification requisites should be for a person going to elect somebody or somebody who's running for an office whose only job is to regulate commerce affecting the public? Now, this may sound kind of nutty, but if you start paying attention to the Constitution and how it was written and what their intent was, there's nothing in there regulating the private side. They never had that power. They were never given that power. But the people have assumed that they somehow have it. But what they did was they turned all of the people into a commercial entity, which gave them the power over everybody. And that's what we're now addressing. And this vote thing that you're talking about, it ain't going to happen. There's nobody in any position in any state or in the federal government, like I said, maybe with the exception of Trump, that is even going to be placed in a position that they're running for because they're not qualified. They're all U.S. subject alien elements working for a foreign cartel. They all get paid in Federal Reserve notes. And their allegiances are not to our organic law. And most of them aren't qualified because of other reasons, which I'm not going to get into. But if you had the right to walk into your local DMV office, for instance, and fill out a little affidavit that said, I want an exempt placard for my vehicle because it's private, and you would walk into your Secretary of State's office and say, here's my state ID that I want you to authenticate. And you walk into your local county tax assessor for the property and say, here's my application for a allodium title for this property I'm sitting on. If you did some of these things, you might have an idea about what some of those rights should be that you haven't taken the time to figure out or apply for. And yet you're worried about an election that isn't going to happen. And most of the people in it who are voting, they're not qualified any more than the people they're going to be voting for. This whole thing is a great big movie. It's designed to get people to kind of wake up to see what the hell is really going on. Well, you go back to your original 13 constitutions and look and see how many times you find the word freeholder, for instance. And it's in all of them up to a certain date. And all of a sudden, this word just kind of vanished. It's no longer part of the requirement for a voter or an elector. So, as far as your election thing is concerned, you're just wasting your time even thinking about it. It's not going to happen. And there's going to be a whole bunch of education that's going to go on teaching people what they need to know about their rights before they can even begin to hold a government employee accountable for violating them. Because people don't even know what they are. And I'm just going to give you some simples. You have the right to travel in your private vehicle, and you have a right to an exempt plate. There's case law and there's statutes law to support exactly what I'm telling you. You also have the right to state ID. We've got examples from a certified Secretary of State office in one of the states that assigned a state ID to one of its citizens. It's got some very interesting wording on it. We have documents a mile long dealing with patents, if you want to use those as title, but you got to have the allodium side, which means only a sovereign can own the allodium title to land in this country. That's a specific. and there's Supreme Court case rulings on this. So you might want to find out what your rights are before you start wandering around trying to vote on somebody that you don't even know who you're voting for, and you don't even know what to tell them they should be doing. And they're not interested in what you think. They just want your vote so they can get their money. It's one great big scam. It has been for as long as I've been around. So I hope I answered your question. But if you've got any further questions on that subject, I'll be more than happy to address it. Because I tell you what I did. I took the Secretary of State, I took the voter registration form, I changed the identification on it, I put in the meets and bounds for my domicile, I put the state seal on it where I signed it correctly, and I handed it to the election board commission at the Secretary of State's office, and they looked at me like I was nuts. And I said, you better send that to the Secretary of State's office, and I better get a receipt for it. And the person just kept looking at me, and I said, you better do what I'm asking you, or you're going to be in trouble. Well, guess what? I got the thing back. I got my receipt back, and they accepted it, and they filed it with all the changes I made on that voter registration form. And I did one of these for the 2020 election. You may have an idea about what that mess was all about. And there's a Brunson case right now that the Supreme Court's getting ready to give the the final ruling on it, which is to reinstate Trump and to eliminate Congress as it's presently seated. And there's going to be a whole lot of questions flying all over the place as to, well, what are we going to do now? And I asked you one question. I'll ask this whole group the question. What in the world has the government done for you personally in your entire life that was for your benefit? Can you tell me? Anything?
No.
Yeah?
Not a
No?
thing.
And they
Well, guess
and
what?
they haven't. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's no such thing as the government doing anything for you. What they're supposed to be doing is issuing the proper ID, giving you the proper exemptions, giving you the proper allodium titles, not taxing you on any of the things you have an absolute right to. That's their job, their duty. And it's your duty to make them do it. But the funny part about it is, I don't know anybody but a very handful of people that have even taken the time to go through the process of learning what they had a right to, let alone exercising them. Driving around with the expired plates on your car, not paying property taxes, and dealing with the sheriff and all. I mean, this list is voluminous, but it happened during a time when there was lawless employees working for us in the system, whose only allegiance was to a foreign banking cartel. And we're at that break point right now. Everything's changing, and it's changing almost overnight. So you're going to see it. You're going to be part of it. So if you want to take a shot at this elector thing, you can always fix a voter registration form. And I sent mine in to Mr. What's the Florida, the VP? He's been whacked already. He was the VP for Trump.
Pence.
Yeah, Mike Pence. How can I forget that one? Yeah, see, I sent a certified registered return receipt voter, not a voter, but a registered elector vote. And my question could be to anybody out there is, what if you sent in the only vote that was by a qualified, certified elector for president in an election? How many votes would it take to put that person in there? If everybody else was not qualified, alien, what's the deal here? Well, that's what's happened to our whole system. Because once they got us converted to something that we weren't, they could put whoever they wanted in there. They didn't care whether you voted for Joe Blow or not. They put the person in, and they did it. They got very good at it. And so most people don't get this part. But if you go back and dig up the original 13 state constitutions and go through and just categorize the words that were used to identify the people in those 13 originals, you're going to find some words in there that you're not familiar with and that don't appear any time after that, except for the word freeholder. And I think Tennessee, I'm trying to remember if Tennessee is the state, that up until last year, it was still one of the requirements to be a government employee or work in any government office. You had to be a freeholder. And what they've done is, the last I heard, they were trying to eliminate that word and replace it with something called selectmen. What the hell is that? It's not a freeholder, and the word freeholder is connected directly to the word allodium. And some of you people, if you don't know about that 1828 Noah Webster's American Dictionary of the English Language, you might want to get one. You can download it off the internet for free. At least you could a couple of days ago. And then you can go through and look up some of the important words that were re-identified because of the change of sovereignty in this country, from the king to the people. And so the word allodium is a very powerful word in there. And you're going to find some other things that if you look up law and some of this stuff. But there's always going to be a redefined word in the later dictionaries. I don't care if it's Black's or Bovier's or whoever you want to look at. They're all convoluted. 90% of all the case law in this country has been convoluted because the people who were in charge were all Jesuits, and they were controlling everything. If you go online and look up how many Jesuit schools there are in this country, you'll be blown away. And if you ever get a hold of the Jesuits' extreme oath, you'll be blown away. Because there's some really horrendous stuff that this group is responsible for. But this is a wake-up. It's a wake-up for us and all these people out there that have been involved in this, including most of the government people that have been in there before Trump came on. And I'm talking about Pence as one of them. Anybody that hold a government office had to have been involved at some level in all of this underground garbage that's been being exposed right now as we speak. So you're not going to get a hold of anybody in the government that's worth their salt or that's qualified, either one. If you could get one of those government employees in there that you know is a good constitutionalist that may understand the federal side of our system and get them to change their status, and you changed your voter registration and you voted for the one you wanted to go in there, guess what? That person would be elected, and a court of competent jurisdiction enforcing our American common law would know and understand exactly what I'm telling you to do. And that person would be a lawfully elected, qualified employee of whatever position he decides to take up. Because he was elected by a properly constituted, qualified, constitutional freeholder. That's once you figure out what you're supposed to be.
Hey, Mason. For everyone's consideration, we'd like you to write down primogeniture and entailment. There's your first homework assignment. You want to know why you don't have a freehold? Primogeniture and entailment. Back to you, Mason.
You need to send me those 3 words. I don't even know what the heck you're talking about.
Okay, primogeniture is when the ultimate controller, as in the king.
That's what it was. I've forgotten it. Yes.
And then the entailment is the dukes and earls were given little plots of their own miniature kingdom. And then the people that lived on that area were serfs.
Yes. And
our founding
we
fathers
have all taken on the position. That's right.
Yep, our founding fathers viewed that with great disdain and said, "Not here.
Exactly.
We're not subject to entailments, and there are no primogeniture recognitions as an American."
By the way,
this is why you're owed a freehold. This is where the land of the free comes from.
Yes. I wanted to make a point. The Articles of Confederation and the Constitution have one particular area in there that is consistent with the proper lawful status of the people in this nation. And it's Article 2 and 4 in the Articles of Confederation, and it's Article 4, Section 2 in the U.S. Constitution, or the Constitution for the United States of America. Anyway, it's specific to what they called themselves and how they identified themselves in the initial documents in this country. And both of those documents confer one thing that's common to both. It's got to do with a citizen of the state. It doesn't say national, doesn't say U.S., it doesn't say any of this other stuff. It says specific, citizen of the state. And there's a Supreme Court case that's pretty pointed on this, Hennessy versus Richardson, and also Chisholm versus Georgia. There's two very powerful cases with respect to the sovereignty and the citizenship. And if you're not a citizen of a state, you're an alien or a citizen of another state. That's your only choice. So if you're not going to be a state citizen, you're something else. You have no rights here, unless you're an inhabitant who's applied for citizenship. How's that? And then, by the way, the only place you could be naturalized in our original system was in a state court of common law jurisdiction. And that's all in First Congress, Second Congress, Third Congress. There's 3 naturalization laws there that are very specific, very pointed, and you can't misread what's being said. And if you really want to get your head wrapped around that U.S. citizen thing, there's a lot of stuff been written about it. But there's a California State Supreme Court case called Ex parte Frank Knowles, 5 Cal 300. And this was, I believe, an 1858 case. And the court gave 2 specific points. One, even though people in this country were so used to the term citizen of the United States, technically there is no such thing. And the second part of that case is that the federal government, in all of its infinite power, has no power to naturalize. 0. And that's what they've been doing. And I know a little bit about that part. My wife actually worked for the immigration system. And you talk about a fiasco this thing has turned into. It's a mess. But the point I'm getting at is that the federal government only had power to create a uniform rule. They didn't have the power to execute it. The only place it can be executed is in a county court of common law jurisdiction. And that's also in that case. So if you do any research and you want to look at this Electra thing, you want to look at the qualifications, you want to look at the citizenship status, you want to look at the power to naturalize, you want to look at the powers of Congress and see if you can find out where they had the power to print money. It ain't there. They only have the power to coin money and regulate its value. They never had the power to print. And there's some very powerful cases and state constitutions that will confirm this for you. The 1849 California Constitution's one as an example. And you can go to section 34 and 35. And the California Constitution specifically prohibits the use of paper or any paper to circulate as money. It can only be gold and silver coin specific. And there's no getting around Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, because it's specific, and it's never been altered, changed, amended. But I remember the House debates that Bernanke and Ron Paul were having. Some of you may have a recall of this particular moment in time. And Ron Paul, he was asked Bernanke, he said, can you please show me how or where you get the authority to print money? That was his question. And Bernanke, he couldn't answer the question right away. So he turned around to one of his little minions behind him, a little gal there, and they talked for a minute or two, and he turns around and says, oh, it's the Federal Reserve Act, 1913. And I'm waiting for Ron Paul. I said, okay, buddy, you going to ask the big question? And he didn't ask it. And I'm pretty sure he knew not to, because the question should have been, can you show me the specific article, section, and clause of the Constitution that authorizes Congress to circulate paper as a payment for debt throughout the several states? He didn't ask the question, but that would have been the one, and everybody on the planet would have known in that moment in time that the Federal Reserve was just another one of those scams dreamed up by the cabal to steal everything, which is what they've done. So they're only going to get one test. Is that all? Those 3 words? That's it?
Oh, between you and I, there'll be more.
No. There's going to be a lot more because people once they get. Um, I'll just say it like this. I remember the day when I walked into that U.S. District Court suing the IRS. I felt a sense of empowerment. I can't tell you how it happened. I can't tell you exactly all of the events that led up to that moment. But I'm telling you this, that when you finally decide that it's time to stand up and face the very things in your life that you should have been facing all along, but were maybe just a little bit afraid that something might happen bad, right now is the time. And you're going to find a sense of empowerment that you never felt before. And it doesn't take long after this event that's coming that you're going to have a sense of freedom that you never dreamed possible. So all I can tell you is hang in there, pay attention to what's going on in your life, listen to the truth where you get it, and act on it when you know it is the truth. Don't be afraid.
And to
Could you
give you an
tell
idea,
me, hi, could you tell the year of the dictionary you were talking about again?
Yes, it's called the Noah Webster's American Dictionary of the English Language, 1828. And you might notice it
1820.
said, yeah, you might notice it said American. It didn't say English Dictionary.
Right.
So that's a key to the wording and the stuff that Noah put in there. And there's a pretty good explanation that he puts in the very front of the book. I have 2 original copies of the book, but you can,
Wow.
like I said, you can download uh, the copy of it on the internet. They actually have a website you go to and just download the app, and you can do searches all through there. The only thing you can't do on the app is you can't put in do a word search and find out like where do I see how many places that he talked about the word law, for instance, or the word citizen, for instance, or those are the things you're going to have to do individually. Make up a list of words that you may not be completely understanding what they mean in the American system. That one case I didn't mention was it's the Hennessy versus Richardson. And I don't have the citation in my brain like some of the other ones, but that one specific, I found it in the library in the legal office of Lockheed, where I worked for 27 years. I found it in one of their shelves on the bookshelf in a case law. It was annotated journal, and I found in there it was talking about the sovereignty of the people. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden here's a statement, and it says um, the people who were subjects of the crown at the Revolution are now citizens of the state. There's another example of the Supreme Court, calling out for the people who they are, specific. So I can't help it if there's a lot of opinions about other things you want to be called or whatever, but I know what my name is, and you can call me a lot of other things, but the state citizen is the primary, and that's where the sovereignty rests and was actually transferred to from the crowns into this nation. And believe me, I know where a lot of the little bodies are buried when it comes to all this Jesuit infiltration. And if you don't think that that word is important, you might go and look up number 40 in the Anti-Federalist Papers. There were 2 groups of papers, by the way. There was the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. And if you look up federal in Noah Webster's, you'll find out that it's a union of princes. That's why we have a federal system, because we are all princes in this system as a citizen of the state. That's our title. You were birthed with it. You were born with it. You might get used to it. And then you need to ask the government, why don't you have ID that matches what I am instead of what you wanted me to be? Because the people that have been doing this, they did it on purpose. There was no mistake.
Wow, well, thank you.
We don't have, let me put it this way. We don't have a long way to go now because it's taken me, I don't know about Jim, but it's taken me over 50 years to get to this point where I could talk this way on an open line that wasn't going to be blocked. And I'll tell you what, for 20 years, the last 20 or so with the Noah Webster's Dictionary, every time I brought it up on a post on one of their group meetings or whatever, they would block me. That was it. I couldn't, they wouldn't let me talk anymore or bring any more documents to the group. So, boy, this dictionary must be important somewhere along the line, or they wouldn't be telling me I can't do it. That's what I look for. What is it you guys don't like? Oh, that's what I need to focus on. That's the
Well,
nature of our government.
Mason, when you open up the door and they have to look down and all they hear is the echo of the rabbit hole, yes, you're going to make someone in high places scared.
They're already done. They're already done. That's the reason this is happening right now.
Yep.
See, a lot of people didn't get the memo. When Trump came in, you know the first walk around he did, or the first walkabout that Trump did? He walked about and met the Queen. And you know what he did in that meeting? He walked right in front of her. Whoa, what the heck is that about? He just took her power and told her where it's at. And she's dead, by the way, and she died long before they said she was. And all these other so-called minions that are out there that were in charge of all these different government agencies and entities, they've all been captured already. And we're at the last phase of the roundup for the middle people. See, there have been so many people that have been put into all these different agencies that were shills, if you want to call them that. They were there only in title, but they were not with the group they were in. And they were put there to keep their eyes on who was what, willing to do what. And that's what's being rounded up. That's the final phase of this whole thing. And it's already started. It just hasn't been broadcast yet. But it will be. And just so you know, the stuff I'm telling you now, things I've known for a very long time, and I know a lot of people who I was very close with back in the, say, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, who disappeared because they didn't know how to keep their mouth shut when it came to the public. And I was standing up there next to the Attorney General telling him what a criminal he was and telling the court, you know, you ought to be arresting this guy because he's a thief. And all the laws that I'm supporting, that I'm giving you, are correct for the people, not for them. But I'm still here. By the way, I've got my army, my entourage around me all the time. And this is something you may come to learn at some point in your spiritual walk. The more you do for the universe, the more security and protection you have around you.
Since October 1, when the United States Incorporated concluded and settled its Chapter 7 bankruptcy, America has been put under land law. And in the background, the military, which was a foreign corporate entity, has been brought back to American land law to be honorable service again. Now, my oldest grandson is in the Air Force, and he's the chief administrator for 5 military brigs on up and down the eastern seaboard. The last time I had a chat with him, he was kind of down in the dumps because he was tired of going out and collecting trash. The two-legged kind of trash. It's so prevalent around us. You basically have to flush 3 times to get back to DC. It's a long way there. But here pretty soon, you're going to start hearing that swirling action. Because that's how close the cleanup is.
Somebody flushed it.
Yep.
Exactly. It's been a long time coming. And you know, I don't like to get too deep into the military stuff, but see, what most people may or may not realize, that will come to light at some point, and it's going to have to be made appropriately, so that the men and women who are part of the military, they're all pawns in a very huge scam. And our Constitution is kind of pointed on this subject. There was a place in there where, I don't remember the exactly article, but some of the Jesuit founders, they decided that they need to figure out how to make a, we'll say, a national military presence that they could control. And most of you may or may not know this, but the militia is the #1 military force in this country. Why? Because it's comprised of all of the male citizens of the state. That's what it was written for. And the National Guard took that over at one point. And even though there may still be some of us around, there's very little acknowledgement about it. But all of those people in that U.S. military status, just remember one thing. They've all signed an affidavit agreeing to be a citizen of the District of Columbia. So there's going to be a lot of backlash and a lot of people that are going to be wanting to get clear, if not because of the nature of the thing, but because why would you want to be associated with something that was so demonic, that all of the funding that you gave in what you called taxes were used for something demonic? And there's going to be some, coming to God with respect to a lot of people. So I just know that ultimately, the military people, even though they may have been duped, just like most of the people in the country, uh, they'll be okay when they finally realize the nature of what they've been asked to do and what they're accomplishing at this point in time.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. Yes, those rabbit holes are pretty deep and they're pretty hard to get out of. I can tell you that. What I'm looking at is trying to figure out the right thing here. There's several groups that are trying to take control of our country. There's the Republic for the United States of America, which is trying to go back to the 1860 with their own constitution. Then there's the American State Assemblies, and which they have all the state assemblies. And the Republic says that they don't recognize the American State Assemblies. They have their own assemblies. And they also say that we don't need to be status corrected because we're going to automatically be status corrected, where the American States Assemblies says we need to get our own status correction. So, we've been lied to all our lives. Which way do we go? Is it the Republic for the United States of America? I know there's other groups out there, there's Russell Gould and other groups, but these groups seem to be the prevalent ones here. The American State Assemblies, that's Anna Van Rights, and then there's the Republic for the United States of America. So I guess I want your guys' opinion on, also the Republic for the United States of America says that the military came to them and is backing them and saying that they're the legit group. So what say you?
Well, as a matter of fact, we are all still part of America. And you've always had splinter groups who wanted to get some level of control for their own personal agendas. But once the people individually begin to understand the position that they're in and the sovereignty that goes with it, you're not going to have to worry about some group somewhere that's got a different agenda and you got to pay homage to them by some other process. And I know about some of those groups. And all I'm telling you is that we are coming to a full circle on what the founders had intended in the inception of this country, which was to create an environment for individual citizens to have all of the attributes of sovereignty in their life, their liberty, and their property, and to live co-equally on the land, not only with their fellow citizens, but with their neighboring countries. And see, we're going to be, if we haven't already started, the example, maybe through the financial side, very solid from which we came. You know, the U.S. the Section 10 of our Constitution is very specific, and the Article section, I forget which one it is, with the Congress and their power to coin money and regulate its value, is going to be the standard that the rest of the country are going to come on with. And I remember when the Chase Bank ran off to Iraq, when they started getting their banking stuff going, you know, and saying, oh boy, here you got the crooks that are down there trying to get this electronic stuff in place. Because that's a control point. And the only thing they can't control in life is the hard stuff. And if you get caught messing with it, if you want to counterfeit it or whatever, that's a death penalty. It's in our first Congress, by the way. The founders didn't miss much when it came to securing the system. So whoever you got that you want to follow, that's okay. It's irrelevant. But let me tell you something. The states originally were never intended to be given an opportunity to separate from the Union. And once states are put in their proper position, people who are put in the trusteeship of the operation of each one of those states are properly seated and have the exercising the proper authority and jurisdiction that they're vested with, which is to secure your private unalienable rights, no matter what county you might be in, you're going to have a whole different world. And by the way, just so you have an inkling about the higher side of this, you know, we're going through an ascension process. It's happening as we speak. And there will be a lot of people, a lot of souls that are going to migrate out because they can't handle the frequencies and the vibrations that are beginning to accelerate in our daily lives right now. It's going to be quite an experience, and a lot of people aren't going to handle it too well, but can't help that. You know, everybody's had an opportunity for quite some time to fix their own personal agenda. Whether they did or not, well, there's nothing we can do about that. But each one of you got responsibility for yourself, whether it be you to help your grandkids to understand what we're talking about or not. It's your choice. And so all I can tell you is that I have a lot of faith in the power that created us all. I know from whence it came. I know why we're here. I know what we're going to be asked to do with respect to each other. And it's going to be really a grand experience for all of us.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else got a question?
That was my chicken. Sorry.
Oh, that was my dog earlier.
Collect them nuggets.
Well, like Mason said earlier, there won't be an election of sorts, and that will cause a lot of people to melt down and ask all kinds of questions. But the exposure of the corruption of the corporate system is what's playing out. Now, I've heard mention new elections out in the future, but our founding fathers had a particular schedule in the election cycle. And the elections were always held with the inauguration aspect in the springtime. So when the new election stuff gets actually up and running, which I believe will be in January, some people may have eyebrows raised that they're not allowed to participate. Here, I'm on Washington. So we've been working on promoting the materials for the new election cycles, the new public office manuals, and we're about to drop a letter into the laps of a whole bunch of people by the end of this month. We have already had 3 Western Washington prosecutors step down from running for a re-election, and they recognize that the legal landscape has changed here in this land. So some of the more prominent rats are exiting the ship. And the really high-level rats left over a decade ago, because the winds of change were already evidenced back then. Think of how many attorneys you know in your landscape. What would it be like not to have?
The attorneys are out of business.
Yep.
The attorneys are all out of business. See, I don't need an attorney to instruct me, the person sitting on the bench, if he's qualified, how to deal with the rights that I've been bringing the court for him to execute. I don't need that. Neither do you. And the point about the election process is very simple. If you have anybody qualified to vote, if you want to, and you have a right to be concerned about who gets involved, or if there's even telling all the people in freehold, but I'm going to give you land citizen in this, because that's the body people and sovereignty. Where are you going to get your food from? Not from a wrong standpoint, you know, on the ground, living on the land. I mean, that was the reason Foley the railroad place. But most of the land here had already been taken over by the Crown. He had all these millions here. They had all their land patents and all the stuff with grants from the Crown. So that had to all be neutralized at the Revolution. Whether it was or not, I don't think so. But it doesn't matter. We're at a point now where all the people who are here now, who they qualify or not, and I'm not going to lay out all the stuff that could come to surface. All I'm saying that Each and every one of us needs to make our claim based on who we discover we are in the system. And if there needs to be some correction made, you're going to be talking to the very people that know if it could be made or not. And again, I'm going to get into those details because that rubs some people a little bit the wrong way. And until I have a particular individual who's got a particular problem in a particular way, I could show somebody who literally does not qualify specific under our common law how to attain sovereignty, actually diplomatic interest. There's many little pieces to this matrix and this puzzle you can't even begin to imagine. But in the surface, we're going to have to learn right now. Hey, tell more about your system and get to God, which is in you, and that's not okay. He's just say on a chapter with it, but don't. The question you're going to be asking are the assignments that you're asking for you and the universe. That means all of us.
Hey, Mason, are there any particular documents that we're going to be asking the people in their personal treasure trove to gather?
Wait a minute. You want to know, are there any documents you're going to ask for who?
From the people that are present tonight.
Oh, you want to know if the people that are on the call tonight are willing to do something?
Yep, if they're needing to gather some personal documentation.
Not necessary.
Okay.
Now listen, I know this may be kind of a crazy idea, but I've always had it in my head that sooner or later the integrity of the people is going to shine. And as people begin to understand the true nature of who they are and the laws that govern us, like the laws that we have no control over, we can't change them, can't amend them. All you can do is learn how to abide by them and then follow the right course. And you kind of got an idea about what that might be. So when somebody comes to me and says, well, my name is so and so, and I need to know how to do this. And, okay, find out what you need to know about one. That way, I'm giving you the opportunity to take the step in the direction you need to go for yourself, and to be able to have the absolute knowledge of what it is the question that you ask me will produce. That sounds like a difficult assignment, I have to tell you, because the people that are left right now, system, they're in for some pretty heavy legwork when it comes to going forward. And it isn't like it's going to be backbreaking. That's not the kind of legwork I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting their heads right and starting to exercise the sovereignty in a way that will be beneficial for everybody else. And it's kind of crazy. He's talking about maybe farming, or might be talking about water cleanup. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios here. And you're going to learn how to be able to acquire a piece of land if you qualify. You may not be impossible. I just happen to know where all these are and how you go. And it's not complicated. And when I ask somebody, have you ever seen a trespassing sign? Yeah, but the nature of a sign that says no trespassing is, that's a different question. And I know about that one pretty well. We have some little exercises going on in some of the other people that are associated with us. And there's a no trespassing sign that deals with foreign soil. And because the country, the states, the soil belongs to the people in their sovereign capacity in an allodium condition, all you'd have to really do is find a piece of property that's been put up for sale, find the status of the people who did it, and just so you know, land speculation is one of those little things that's not looked upon very well by the principles of ownership, of land ownership, and then put in a posting, put in a notice to the people who claim they own it, ask them to produce their title, and then go through a simple little back and forth to determine whether or not the law is going to allow them to do what they're doing or is going to allow you to do what you have a right to. So some people are going to qualify for a low income, some people won't. Some people are going to have more land than they know what to do with that they have no right to, because there's a certain thing that says in a common law, how much land do you need to survive? How many people you got in your family? I mean, come on, you need 10 acres? You realize how big a piece of dirt that is? No, I'm working on 2.5 right now. Maybe I'll increase it to 5, but I don't need all that, man. Greenhouse, chickens, horse, stuff. You'll be surprised how a piece of land just the right size is all you need. But there's going to be a lot of ups and downs with respect to that. But it's all going to be worked out because we already have the principles ahead of everything else. We're all learning how to be sovereigns in our individual and in our collective. And that's the biggest part of this whole exercise. And if I seem to get a little off track once in a while, don't be afraid to step in and say, wait a minute, you missed that. Oh.
Oh, and by the way, there is a pre-1860 and a post-1860 difference in your state constitutions.
Well, if you're talking about all the states,
the 34 states that existed pre-Civil War.
Yep. And those states are the only ones that are lawfully ceded states. That's another matter.
There was an action of those 34 states. They voted to admit the other 16 states on an equal footing doctrine, and that took hold effective October 1 of 2020, by the way.
But see, those states, they never qualified the people who did voting in the first place, and their constitutions are not according to the original 13. All been obliterated. All requirements were in the original 13 have been eliminated. There isn't anything after those 13 that are still maintaining any symbols of a founding document on an equal. And there's going to be a lot of rewrites. You can put it some and you way outside the scope of your authority. And I at some point what's relevant at the point that I'm being at. What I ask everybody is the people that are going to come along that are not qualified simply because of the things they do. Well, the same thing applies to the airport that never made it to state. I'll tell you one that specific that. Now, there's a whole bunch of, oh my God, what, you can't write. Wait a minute. Let me ask you a question. How many of you lots of state? and how much state actually belongs to the people as opposed to the federal government. And I'll tell you what the answer is. There are lots, these 20 of them, and the land, 97% of it, 95% of the land in Nevada is held by the federal government out of their own mouths. And I'm like, what the heck is this about? So talk about a land grab. So we got a lot of little things to fix, but it's not complicated. And I'll tell you the truth, 90% of all the garbage that's been written out there is way too crazy to even think about trying to fix. You just take and wad it up and throw it in the trash and take a new, start new. It'll be a lot simpler because we don't need government to control our private side. If you get that little thing in, that's a big one. They not only can't do it, they don't have the authority to do it. And every one of them has been doing it all the time, technically subject to Gitmo.
Well, it's 6:30. I'm going to drop off for the evening. I appreciate everyone for turning out who showed up. Spread the word. I'll see you next weekend. Best wishes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and our main speakers, Silver and Mason, for being here. I hope you'll be a regular with us. But it's been very educational. I'll get it up on YouTube and the recording as soon as possible. So thank you, everybody.
All right.